All right, let's dive into this explainer of the source material. Today, we're putting on our analytical history professor hats, and we're going to examine the precise, rigorous, and literally 2,600-year-old records of the Buddha's arrival and departure. Now, if you think you already know this story, the royal prince, the dramatic midnight escape, the search for enlightenment, well, I want you to prepare yourself. We are going to completely strip away centuries of poetic embellishment to look at the actual mechanical architectural blueprint of these events, exactly as they're recorded in the original texts.
Here's our syllabus for today as we step away from all that messy folklore. We'll be covering rethinking the Buddha's history, the 5 great observations, the Kshatriya social authority, uncovering the structural flaw, the public departure record, and finally wrapping up with Tripitaka manuals versus folklore. Okay, let's kick things off with part 1, rethinking the Buddha's history, deconstructing the myth. I want to ask you this directly, right out of the gate. Did the Buddha really sneak out at midnight? I ask this because the answer actually creates an instant paradigm shift in how we understand his historical reality. We've all heard the classic tale, right? He silently leaves his sleeping wife and child under the cover of darkness. But is that what actually happened? Well, look at this. This brilliantly illustrates the jarring juxtaposition between emotional storytelling and analytical precision. On one side, popular folklore gives us a secret midnight escape through a back door. But on the other side, the actual Tripitaka record details a highly public departure made while his parents and family were literally right there, actively weeping and crying. Just think about how completely different that is. He didn't sneak away to avoid confrontation. Actually, he faced the ultimate emotional and social pressures of human existence head on, and he still made the conscious, deliberate choice to walk right out the front door. Moving on to part 2, the 5 great observations, the calculated arrival. Now, this is absolutely crucial. His birth was not just some random biological occurrence. It was a precise, calculated phenomenon. The emergence of a Buddha requires an exact ontological alignment. In the source material, this is known as the Panchavilokana, or the 5 great observations. Basically, a Buddha doesn't just randomly appear. They emerge only when the specific structural conditions of reality are perfectly aligned, which allows them to identify and explain the mechanisms that actually sustain existence. So what are these alignments? Well, these 5 variables were strict prerequisites for his arrival. First up is time, or Kaliya. It had to be an era where human lifespan and intellectual capacity were suitable for grasping such a complex Dhamma. Second is continent, or Dipaya, specifically Jambudvipa, to foster the right spiritual environment. Third is country, or Dashaya. This had to be the middle country, a centralized hub where the teachings could actually take root and spread like wildfire. Fourth is clan, or Kuliya, meaning a social lineage capable of commanding absolute respect. And fifth is mother, or Matava, a figure possessing the immense purity and virtue necessary to carry a bodhisattva. Without every single one of these variables locked firmly into place, the emergence simply doesn't happen. All right, part 3, the Kshatriya social authority, a structural necessity. So why was Siddhartha born into the Kshatriya, the warrior noble caste? It's pretty easy to assume it was just to give him a dramatic backstory, going from rags to riches in reverse. But analytically speaking, the Kshatriya status was a rigorous structural necessity. It was required not for the wealth, but to provide the immense social authority needed for his message to take root. Think about it. If you're going to point out an ontological reality that completely contradicts everyday conditioned existence, you need major sociopolitical leverage. You need a platform where people are structurally obligated to sit down and listen to you. Let's move to part 4. Uncovering the structural flaw, the apex of luxury. Check out this timeline. From age 16, when he married, until age 29, we are looking at a 13-year duration of absolute saturation. He was completely immersed in the fullest pleasurable moments human life can possibly offer, complete with constant attendance in concubines. By tracking this timeline, we see he didn't just reject poverty or slight discomfort. No, he saturated himself in the absolute peak of worldly success. He basically ran the ultimate experiment on sensory gratification to its absolute furthest conclusion. In the result of that massive 13-year experiment, he realized that even the highest states of pleasure contained a structural flaw, a drawback. This is a profound realization because it reveals that the ultimate drive seeking gratification is inherently flawed from the ground up. It doesn't matter how much you turn up the volume on pleasure. It literally cannot resolve the underlying drive that seeks it. This intense internal dissonance is exactly what prompted him to find the exit door. It was a highly informed exit from the very summit of human existence.
This brings us to Part 5, the public departure record, confronting human existence.
Tying back to the question we asked earlier, his departure was an open, conscious choice made directly in the face of the ultimate emotional pressures. He stood right before his weeping parents and family, and he still left. Now, this disciplined account matters immensely because correcting the history of the man corrects our understanding of his incredibly demanding, conscious path. If we think he just sneaked away because it was too emotionally difficult to say goodbye, we completely misunderstand the level of absolute resolve and detachment that is required to dismantle existence itself.
And finally, Part 6, Tripitaka Manuals versus Folklore, the lost mechanics.
Now, this number right here, 500, this represents a catastrophic gap. It took approximately 500 years after his passing for the oral tradition and the chain of spiritual friendship to be lost. During this half-millennium gap, the transition to book-based records introduced significant translation errors, and the technical, surgical precision of the original teachings really began to fade.
As you can see here, a massive substitution occurred over time. On the left, we have the Tripitaka Manuals, 57 comprehensive books filled with rigorous mechanics, analytical precision, and highly functional protocols designed to deconstruct existence. But on the right, you see they were systematically superseded by contemporary narratives. We're talking poetic embellishments, translation errors, a deep desire for emotional comfort, and story-based folklore. Over centuries, these narrative-driven accounts gained absolute cultural dominance because, frankly, human beings usually prefer comforting stories over rigorous, demanding mechanics.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. By choosing comforting stories over the 57 books of rigorous mechanics, what profound truths have we left behind a closed gate? If we truly want to understand the opposite of existence, are we willing to trade our comforting fairy tales for the demanding, analytical precision of the original manual? It's a question that challenges for sure not just how we view history, but how we approach the fundamental mechanics of our own reality.